representing Intrepid MMA, he comes to us tonight from Vancouver, Washington.
My name is Ricardo Cortez.
My name is Shane Sorensen.
My name is Kyle LaFritz.
My name is Jake Thomas. I'm from Intrepid MMA.
Intrepid MMA.
Intrepid MMA.
Intrepid MMA out of Vancouver, Washington. Intrepid MMA is awesome. We got Coach Jake and Coach Shane.
And team's great. My coaches are great. They're, a little funny sometimes, but it's great being around them. They're great people.
We're a small garage team. We have mats laid out on the garage. We have a bag hung up, and we utilize our space really well. Intrepid MMA originally started out as an idea between me and my older brother. We had talked about starting like a family gym together, and at the time we were, my last name's Thomas. We were talking about calling it Thomas Ultimate Fitness. The initials would be tough, and then our slogan was going to be like, "Are you tough enough?" And that's kind of what we were going on. But then all of a sudden, another a promotion came out. It's called like Tough Enough Promotions, and that's kind of what they do. And so that kind of took that away from us. And over the time, the gym never got started, and we kind of moved on from the idea. But then I had one of my pro fights in Salem, Oregon, and my older brother messaged me and said, "Hey, I got a buddy named Anthony Marks, and he wants to start training with you. Do you want to train with him?" And I said, "Yeah, you know what? Let's do that." And from there, started adding guys in. I coached a guy named David Converse, who went on to be one of the top. Well, I coached David actually before we even had the team. Before we were even a team, we were just getting together. I would coach David. He went on to be one of the top amateurs in the country. He had like 30-something amateur fights or something like that. My younger brother Skylar, he came and fought with us too. And Skylar was a wild man. He was just a natural athlete. Like, I think Skylar could have been a much better fighter than I ever was. Just naturally, he was a better fighter. But our team record, we ended with a 24-6 record at 80% win rate. But it started there in the garage, and at the time, there wasn't a name right away. We were training, and my brother and I were talking about it. My brother Cullen, we were talking about names, and we started just stumbling around the word Intrepid. We loved the idea of it being fearless, fighters, and attacking with intensity, and not being afraid, but really training to be prepared for everything, so that way you could go out there free from fear. And, Intrepid means to be without fear, to be fearless. And so that's where the Intrepid part came in for Intrepid MMA. We're fearless fighters. And we liked that idea and started playing around with it. My brother developed the original logo that we had as a project for an arts class. And then from there, we've kind of moved on from that logo as, it's morphed. And this is the logo that we had when our team ended. And so since it's been 10 years and we're back in training people, we thought it'd be cool to bring back the old logo with it saying Intrepid on the front and doing the star on the back, talking about the different things that we train. So in our gym, we have Shane. Shane's a Muay Thai guy. He's a jiu-jitsu guy. He's done MMA as well. And mine's primarily boxing and wrestling, but I've also got really good kicks, and so we mix everything in together, and the 5 points of the star just kind of represents at the top. You can see on the very top it says MMA. It says MMA on the very top, and then the other 4 talks about jiu-jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, wrestling. Those are the things we mix into what we do, and that's kind of how we develop the style that we have, where it's very well-rounded. And, we went through, Shane came in, him and I had trained a few times together before he ever came into the garage and started training with us.
I've had a great experience with this camp, and me and Jake have fought for a long time alongside each other. He used to be my coach, and now we're coaching alongside each other, getting Ricky and Kyle ready for their debuts at the FCFF Rumble with Roseland. Feeling really confident for these guys. Definitely mixing our experiences together. We got Jake, who's a wrestler. We got me, who's alongside him, as him being a pro MMA fighter, myself being a pro kickboxer. I have 28 fights, 1 loss, including that's all amateur boxing and MMA and kickboxing combined. we definitely have kind of integrated our systems together. We've trained together. We've integrated a system that really combines the both of all worlds, both stand-up, ground, everything, jiu-jitsu, wrestling.
When he first came in, I was trying to get somebody in that has better jiu-jitsu to help our guys out with more jiu-jitsu. And so I called him and I was like, hey, man, I need some help over here with these guys. I got some guys fighting, but I really want to get them some better jiu-jitsu technique than what I'm offering. And so he was like, yeah, man, I'll come in and help.
Intrepid MMA is a team that's been comprised of real grassroots fighters. There's a very good composure, calmness, and real high aggressive sense of fighting for everybody. So we definitely don't cater to the weak, but we definitely build people up. We want people to not rest on the laurels, but rest on their training. You fall back on that, and our training is very, very, very specific and very just precise. Really, we have years of experience between me and Jake, and we and all the experience between the guys that we're training. We all kind of take input from them. We don't tell them it's one way or no way. It's really, we work together, and we custom tune a training camp for everybody. There's many hours spent on after training, not just the training itself, to make the most of it, whether you're amateur or professional, because when you're amateur you have only a certain amount of time. So Intrepid really has a good rich history of very, very successful fights.
Well, I started out originally as a wrestler. But I got into wrestling because I loved MMA. And I've been a fan of MMA since the very beginning. I remember renting all the first few on cassette, or VHS tapes. I remember renting those. And then my mom kind of had an abusive boyfriend, and I decided to I wanted to learn to fight because I wanted to be able to beat up and stop something like that from happening again. And so that's what got me interested in fighting. And when I would watch the UFC, I noticed and I thought that all the best were wrestlers. Most of the champions were wrestlers in the early days. Obviously it was jiu-jitsu in the first few, but once wrestlers started figuring out what was going on, they're the ones that became the champions. And to this date, they're the sport that represents most champions inside the UFC. And so I got into wrestling purely with the intention of, getting better at fighting. And I fell in love with the sport of wrestling. And as I started wrestling, I went from there. I met one of they were twin brothers. They were my best friends at the time, Jacob and Josh Garza. And their dad was a professional boxer. And I was telling him, I wanted to learn about boxing. And he started taking me to Police Activities League. He took me to PALS, which was a small boxing gym that was in an old closed down, it was a closed down police station. And so we had a ring in there and we had some space in there, and we started boxing. At 16 years old, I got the opportunity to go compete in this thing. It was called a Hapkido fight. And basically it was MMA without strikes to the head, and we wore a gi. And I was fighting guys that were grown adults at that time. And from there, after that, I went on and had my MMA debut, actually inside the FCFF, the same place that both of our guys, Ricky and Kyle, the same place where they're fighting, that's the same place I made my debut. That was at FCFF 22, and they're on FCFF 116 right now. But over the years, I've added kickboxing, I've added jiu-jitsu, and so I've become very well-rounded over the years. But originally started out with wrestling, added boxing, and then just continued added more on as I went along.
I was originally coached by Intrepid. Now being a coach myself, after just kind of establishing the system, me and Jake have really came a long ways with our experiences.
But Intrepid MMA is a thing that we started about 10 years ago, we started that about 13 years ago, and then we stopped about 10 years ago. I kind of transitioned to coaching high school wrestling. And then, the team kind of dissolved at that point, and everybody went in different directions. We all stayed friends and everything like that. We all stayed in communication and stuff with each other, but we all just kind of went our own direction for a little while there. And I coached wrestling, and Shane went out into Vegas and trained and did some other stuff out there, some kickboxing and other things like that. Through coaching wrestling, I met Ricardo Cortez, who's out there, who goes by Ricky now. He was one of our heavyweights on our team that I was coaching at. He was weighing about 275 pounds. And I had met Kyle LaFritz, who was a wrestler for one of the coaches that I coached with when he was in high school, and Ricardo came in to help coach, or LaFritz came in to help coach the heavyweights. So he started working with Ricardo. And then after, high school ended for Ricardo, we had all the COVID stuff going on, but Ricardo contacted me one time asking me if I'd help coach him at the state wrestling tournament. He entered the open tournament for wrestling, and he asked if I could go coach him. So I said, yeah, let's do it. Let's get to work. He went out there, wrestled that tournament. He took second at the open tournament. There was about 16 people in there. The only person that he lost to was an Olympian from Afghanistan. And that's the only person he lost to, and he lost to him by, I think, 2 or 4 points, and took second at state. Kyle LaFritz, we went out to the U.S. Open together in Las Vegas, and he was talking about wrestling it, but, his weight was really, really off. We went down there, he was 300-something pounds, and he was talking about cutting the 30 pounds and getting down there and wrestling, but when we got out there, it just wasn't reasonable. So it became more of a watch, observe, and be fan of the sport type thing while we were out there. And, we had a lot of fun. We got to see a lot of the greats wrestle. We watched Gable Stevenson wrestle. We watched all sorts of cool stuff. Gable Stevenson, if you're not a wrestling fan, he's an Olympian. He's an Olympic gold medalist. He's an NCAA champion. So we got to see a lot of the best wrestlers out there.
So there's a heart attack grill out in Vegas, and if you're 350 pounds, you step on the scale, they'll give you a free meal. So I was just joking around. I stepped up on the scale. Everyone in the crowd was cheering me on, and to be honest, I didn't like that they were cheering me on, because that meant I was big.
And while we were out there, I just started telling him, I was like, man, you're going to fight. We got to get you a fight. We're going to use this fighting. We're going to get you in shape. You're going to fight. And so while we were down there in Vegas, I made him go on the FCFF website and fill out an application so that he can have his first fight.